keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Dante Gomez, on this beautiful Tuesday in Denver. We are joined by NFL reporter James Palmer. Got a whole bunch to get into as Denver wins last week, sweeps the Raiders. Looking now to the playoff aspirations of this team, as well as just the whole AFC playoff picture. Maybe some awards for some of these Broncos as well. We'll dive in. James, how you doing today?
Good, Dante, man. We got a big week here. Football pretty much almost every day moving forward throughout this week. So it's going to be a blast. And I'm a Buckeye, so it's game week. It's the game. It's Michigan, Ohio State. So we haven't won in 3 years. That is the number one thing on my mind, honestly, right now is on Saturday morning. Just beating the living hell out of the team up north. Yeah.
Hey, I feel you on that. I'm a Sun Devil, so there's actually a chance that we might see you guys in the playoffs, which could be fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah, great time to be a sports fan, especially in Denver. Every team's in action. Every team's pretty relevant at this point, but we'll start with the Broncos. They sweep the Raiders for the first time in a long time. Win in Las Vegas for the organization's first time as well. What did you make of the game? Did you I know the first half was a little slow for the Broncos offensively, couldn't really score on those red zone trips, kind of broke through in that second half. But what were your major takeaways from the game? Yeah, we'll just let you have the floor there.
Okay. I honestly, the Broncos are in a territory right now is you got to make sure you win the games you're supposed to win. And this is one of the games you're supposed to win. And they've done that. Now, their record against teams that are, above 500, very different than teams that they've faced below 500. It's almost night and day. But what that is showing me is they're not losing any games that you go into Sunday going, they should win this game, and they end up, laying an egg in some capacity. And I think the next two are part of that because you finished with 3 really, really tough games, in my opinion. So this was the first of 3 in this group where I go, you should probably win all of these games. And playing a team with 2 wins and is on one of the longest losing streaks in the NFL right now, and it's had quarterback issues and health issues. We know Max Crosby's a great player. We know Brock Bowers is a great player. In my opinion, he's the biggest threat to Bo Nix for Rookie of the Year, even above Jaden Daniels. He's that good. But you should have won this game. And going out and winning games you're supposed to win, I think is like the first check mark you should have as you're going into changing a culture, becoming a consistent playoff team. They haven't made the postseason, obviously, in an eternity since the 2015 season. So this is the type of game where you go, yeah, we started slow, but we got things together in the second half. And again, we beat a team we should beat, which to me is a real positive in the spot the Broncos are in right now.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think the first sign of a good team is beating bad teams, taking care of business. Even if it is on the road, it is a divisional matchup. Those have been traditionally tough for the Broncos and throughout the NFL. So I agree. I was a little surprised at the Raiders. I kind of expected a little bit of quit out of them. Obviously didn't see that in this game. Were you surprised with the Raiders' effort in this game?
No, not if you know Antonio Pierce at all, and if you know AP and the way he's wired, and you know the way some of the leaders that are still there. I mentioned Max and kind of what he brings. I don't know if people know, outside of being just one of the best players in football, like what he brings in terms of culture to that building, to bringing guys in for early lifts, to spreading kind of that contagious work ethic he has, and he does that within a roster. Their head coach is, a former player, a low draft pick that made the most of his NFL career and ended up becoming, a team captain on a Super Bowl team. And he's wired in an ability to go out there and get the most out of his guys. And that's what they're trying to do with the roster that I mentioned is littered with injuries and wasn't very good in the first place. When you have injuries on a roster that isn't great, it's compounded even further. And then you're playing the Broncos, right? I mean, that's a big part of Raiders Broncos. That's a big part of divisional games. It's why you got to win your divisional games. It's been an issue for the Broncos throughout the last several years, but there's always an added emphasis within divisional games. And so I wasn't surprised. I was interested in how well they ran the football as a rushing attack with their first 2 running backs out of the game and unable to go in this one. They ran the ball on Denver a little bit. And I think that was a bright spot for Vegas. That was something that I didn't want to see happen from a Broncos perspective. But the fight, no, I'm not surprised by it, specifically with the way these two teams have a history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've seen Antonio Pierce firsthand, and he'll get those guys ready to play. Absolutely. As far as the Broncos defense, maybe wasn't as stellar as they've looked all season. They did come up with those big plays, a little bit of bend don't break style in this game. But letting up 19 points to a fairly anemic offense in the Raiders. Any concerns from the Broncos defense, or do you think it was just one of those games where the style just kind of dictated that style of play?
I think, Donnie, a few things jump out at me. One, Zach Allen's an unbelievable player. And I think we saw it again. Like, yeah, they were able to get to the quarterback, right? I think they had 5 sacks, still lead the NFL in sacks. I think they're 2 ahead of Houston. But you still see his presence lost on a defensive line. I mentioned the ability that the Raiders had to run the football. I don't think they would have ran it as well if Zach's playing in this game. I think we saw that up front, how important he is. Losing Riley Moss definitely changes what you're doing as a defense. He's your number 2 corner. You get slower. Levi Wallace is a veteran, and he can certainly step into the role. You definitely lose some speed in your secondary, and how you're operating. So I think those jump out at me. I still think you played fine. I still think you played with the ability to make the big play. Turnovers have always been an issue for this team, honestly. It's like the one thing that this defense has been lacking this year is the ability to force turnovers. And they got 2 of them, right, in this game, I think it was, the pick and the fumble. So they were able to, kind of make up for some of the issues of giving up some chunk plays. But I thought the Raiders had a good game plan, honestly. And I thought that played a factor in the way that this kind of fell, as well. But I think the biggest part is that you missed one of the better defensive linemen in football in Zach Allen up front, and you could tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, Zach Allen's having an all-pro season. I could see him and Surtain being on that all-pro team at the end of this year. Other awards, though, that we could see in Denver, you mentioned earlier, Rookie of the Year, Bo Nix. At this point, would you be disappointed if he did not win that award, or do you still see Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers as some major threats to that?
Yeah, they're threats. A tight end's never won the award. I mean, it dates back to 1967, I want to say, and a tight end's never won it. I think it'd be really hard for Brock Bowers to do it. The crazy thing is he's playing like the best tight end in football, like not the best rookie tight end. He's playing the best of all the tight ends. And it to me, I think that's crazy to say, well, this guy's probably not going to win Rookie of the Year when he's playing, a premier position, a position that's extremely difficult to learn in your rookie season. Oftentimes you're learning multiple positions as a tight end, right? I'm not taking anything away from learning the quarterback spot your rookie year either. I mean, obviously it's extremely hard, but there's a reason why rookie tight ends don't win the award. Obviously it's predominantly a quarterback / receiver award is kind of what happens every year. But Brock Bowers has been outstanding. And I do think, though, with that said and everything that I laid out and why he might not win it, I think it is Bo's award to lose right now. I think you're seeing the Commanders season go in a different direction. I do sadly think that the injury that Jaden Daniels sustained with the rib injury, I did their game a couple of Thursday nights against Philly, and talking to people there, it is impacting him. He'll never admit it. He's a tough kid. I think that's a feather in his cap for the way he's trying to fight through it, but we're seeing it impact his play. He's not running as much. He hasn't been as accurate. And their team seems to be heading in a different direction than Denver. I think that's another bonus for Bo Nix, is that the Broncos are surging. The Broncos are starting to get national attention the way they're playing for a variety of reasons. The way Sean Payton is in probably the coach of the year conversation, the way they're playing this with a salary cap deficit and a bunch of guys that a lot of people probably nationally don't know. And Bo Nix is playing outstanding. So I think it's his award to lose, honestly, right now, as long as he just maintains what he's doing. I think that's the biggest thing. If he keeps going the way he's going, and we're seeing these incremental growth and more comfort, I think it's his award right now. I honestly do.
Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday. It's just the Broncos seem to be ascending while the Commanders are descending.
Mm-hmm.
Typically a trend with Cliff Kingsbury teams too. So if you're looking at the history of that, all the way back to Texas Tech, to his time with the Cardinals. So no surprises here on that end. Jaden Daniels does seem to be a spectacular talent. So we'll see if he's able to overcome those obstacles. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Bo Nix's award to lose. And then, excuse me, sorry, you mentioned something else there I wanted to touch on, and I can't remember now. But how
about Sean Payton? How about that? Was that it?
Oh, it was not exactly that. It was Brock Bowers. But do you think Sean Payton has been vindicated with his pick of Bo Nix at this point? Because there were some folks around Denver that were like, hey, let's run it back with Russell Wilson. We'll take Brock Bowers in the draft. Or do you think it'll wait? Do you think we'll have that answer this year, or do you think it won't be an answer that we get until 3, 4, 5 years from now?
No, I think it's been answered now. I mean, because there was plenty of teams that I talked to that were like, I can't believe he picked him at 12. Like we had a third round pick on him. Like that was literally some other teams. Some other teams like, well, I don't like his game at all. Like, and so there definitely was a little bit of like, ooh, Sean Payton is reaching here. Like this is a stretch. He forced Russell Wilson out of the building, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that. That was his decision to move on, and they're going to eat the money the way they're eating it. And he reached for a quarterback. Well, it doesn't seem to be the case right now. And I think he's getting the last laugh right now with the way everybody kind of questioned the pick, the way they went through a quarterback battle that everybody said, well, he needs more reps. He needs more reps. Why are you competing with Jarrett Stidham? I think there's the school of thought, and I don't know if Sean is entirely in this school, but there's plenty of people in the NFL that are like, if you want your guy to be the guy, have him earn it. Do the opposite of what Chicago did with Caleb Williams, where essentially like before they even started spring camp, they're like, oh, he's a starting quarterback, right? Like from the jump. And I get both schools of thinking, but it seems like Sean was making him earn it, making him earn the respect of teammates, going through a quarterback battle, weathering him a little bit further. The first month of the season doesn't go exactly as, he goes 4 games without throwing a touchdown, I think it was. Like it just didn't go well. And all of that kept snowballing, I think, in a lot of national perception about what were the Broncos and Sean Payton doing with this pick. Now we're talking about Bo Nix is the front runner for Rookie of the Year. Sean Payton has his team as a playoff team right now, one of the best defenses in all of football. And they're doing this with like a third of the money missing from the rest of what the NFL can do in terms of putting a roster together. So they're hamstrung tremendously on what they can do in terms of building this roster, the money they can spend on bringing players in. You saw the receiving core that a lot of people were questioning, a running back room that everybody's questioning, a tight end room that, I'm saying all of these things. Anybody outside of Denver may not know who most of these players are outside of Cortland Sutton that Bo Nix is throwing the football to or handing it off to. And what are they doing? They're winning a lot of games and they're playing really well. And the kid's playing really, really well at quarterback. I think he is certainly in the conversation. I would say Mike Tomlin might be the front runner for it right now because of the old adage of if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. He's got 2 quarterbacks and he keeps winning. And he's looking to put both of them on the field, it seems like. And so, there's a small group up there. I don't know if Sean's going to win Coach of the Year. He deserves a ton of credit for what he's done in terms of coaching this football team. Like Jonathan Gannon in that group, put Tomlin in that group. You can almost put Andy Reid, which just gets overlooked every year in that group, Kevin O'Connell. But Sean's having a great season in terms of the way that he's winning football games and grooming a young quarterback at the same time that keeps getting better every week.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the thought process that quarterbacks learn how to play quarterback in the NFL of 2 ways. It's either you are on a bad team and you are making them progress forward and maybe you're going to learn through your mistakes, or it's the other way where you're on a good team, you come into a good situation and you learn how to play quarterback the right way, and then you expand on your game throughout your first couple seasons there. And I think Bo Nix fits into the latter group there where he's on a good team, he's playing winning football. And I think throughout, from the beginning of the season to now, he's learning, he's expanding on his game, learning to push the ball a little more while still keeping that mistake-free style to him. Mm-hmm. And we actually had a conversation on the drive yesterday. Curious what your take is. Although the offense has been surging the last, 4 or 5 weeks, do you still think this is a defensive-led team where the defense sets up the offense to succeed? Or do you think it's flipped at this point where the offense can go out there and win you a game?
Oh no, this is a defensive football team. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. You're third in the NFL in as a defense, I believe, right now. You're first in sacks. Like you have a lot of feathers in your cap in the way this defense is playing. I think that has aided Bo Nix in terms of how he was able to play through this first half of the season of his NFL career. And it's because of this. Like a lot of guys, like you mentioned, are playing on a bad team. You got to go out there and try to do a lot as a rookie quarterback. Bo's going out there going, I don't need to force this football. Let's not take a sack. Let's not turn it over. My defense is going to get me the ball back. Like they're going to force a 3-and-out. There's most likely not going to be points on the board, and we're going to get the ball back. I can play accordingly with that. Mm-hmm. And I think that still allows you, even if you put up points as an offense, and we're seeing this offense get a little bit more explosive, right? We're seeing them get downfield a little bit more. We're seeing the emergence of Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix together. I think they're still allowed to operate as an offense because of the way this defense is playing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm on your side as well. I think
Yes.
Zach was on the other side, saying that the offense has been the shining star of the last 4 weeks. But no, I'm with you. I think nothing on this offense goes without how the defense is playing, how the defense sets them up with these short fields, with these takeaways occasionally, and gets them in good positions to score.
They don't give up points. I mean, that's number one thing. Like, if your defense doesn't give up points, you're going to have a better chance to succeed as an offense if you don't ever really have to play catch up. And what's the biggest part of that? And I'm going to talk to Zach. I'm going to be on the drive tonight, teaser, and I'm going to talk to these guys about it, because the other part is, but how often is Bo Nix playing from like 2 scores behind? Like, right, and having to go out there and put the offense on his shoulders and have to throw the football a bunch and be predictable as an offense when you're playing from behind. Like, that's not a normal thing. They're not out of games because of their defense. They don't have to be predictable as an offense. They can still run their entire offense throughout the course of a game because their defense always keeps them in games.
Yeah, no, I'm on your end of that.
That's right.
You did mention there running your entire offense. They did still pass 42 times in the game against the Raiders there. I mean, good completion percentage, great on Bo, but is that sustainable, or do you think it's we're going to need to see this run game improve over the next 4 years for this playoff push?
We do need to see the run game improve for sure. I'm going to look this up right here and take a look at Bo Nix as we to kind of prove this point here. Yeah, you need to run the ball better. That's certainly the case. But we've kept saying like, they're gonna run the football. They're gonna run the football more. I think we had a large enough sample size here that like Sean wants to put some of this on Bo, and some of these throws are easy throws, right? Some of them are part of a run game. Some of the screen game that they've developed over the last several weeks that's been really good. The wide receiver screen, some of the dump offs, like those are throws, but that's part of your run game in a sense. Go talk to Andy Reid kind of about that all his years in Philly, right? But I'm looking at this like. He's still throwing the ball a good amount. Like it's been this way throughout the course of the season. Like he only has, there's only 1, 2, 3 games where he's in the 20s in attempts. And so this is their offense.
Exactly. And that's why I mentioned it, because they don't seem to be out of games where it's like, oh, we have to pass on every, down on this drive. It seems like they could have a balanced offense if they wanted to or were effective at it. It just seems like the running game just hasn't been effective.
Yeah. I don't ask you, like, did you see a whole lot of room to run on Sunday? I don't think there was.
No. I don't blame the running back. I mean, the guys were getting to them, at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage on a lot of these. So no, I don't necessarily blame the running backs. Maybe it could be schemed up better. That's a lot of bigger question for Sean Payton.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not gonna. Sean knows what's the old adage, right? He's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But like, I would think this too, like with a rookie quarterback, what happens with a lot of rookie quarterbacks, right? There's a lot of pressure. There's usually a lot of blitzes, and Bo's handled it really well of late. But when you bring a lot of pressure, how do you combat that usually? And when you know pressure's coming, the dump off screen game, like you're not going to run the ball right into the blitz. Like they have these little dump off screens that have been pretty effective as the pressure has come, which is kind of, like I mentioned, part of your running game. So I think that plays into the balance a little bit. All these are not strikes downfield, right? Being ultra aggressive. A lot of this is somehow to this wide receiver screen game or how they're kind of implementing Mims into some of the stuff they're doing behind the line of scrimmage and kind of utilizing him in some of a different style of run game. So, but I do think this is their offense. Like this is the way they operate, and Bo's going to throw the ball 30 times a game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we've seen so far. We'll see if that continues. Let's move on here to the playoff picture. We had 2 teams that are directly above the Broncos in action last night, in the Ravens and Chargers. I remember actually we were doing the show probably like a month or 2 ago, and I asked you, where do you see the Broncos comparing to the Ravens and Chargers? So it looks like a month and a half later, they're still right there next to them. How do you see this AFC playoff picture shaking out?
I think both those teams, everybody in Denver I think both those teams are still better than Denver. They both have a top 5 quarterback. I mean, Justin Herbert's playing outstanding. We know Lamar is playing outstanding. I think that's an immediate difference maker. And they're experienced teams. You got a rookie quarterback who's playing well, like playing really, really well. But is he playing like Herbert and Lamar Jackson and the time that they've spent in the league? No. I still think both those teams are probably better than Denver. I'd say Houston is fading, but they're going to win their division, so they're in. I think they're better than Indianapolis. You're right. Now that I'm saying this, I remember our conversation about this. They're still better than Indy. I think their threat right now is Miami. I think Miami's like a real threat to them. The way that they're playing. I mean, they're on fire right now. The way Tua has played, I think he's completed over 70% of his passes in all 5 games since he's been back. They put up a boatload of points. I think like at least like almost like 27, 23, 34, 34, like off the top of my head. They're playing really well offensively. And then if you look at what Miami has left, because I was looking about this for another show, like they got the Packers on Thursday, which is a huge game for them in the cold. But then they play the Jets, Texans, Niners, Browns, Jets. I mean, they can win. They can win all of these. Will they? I don't know if they'll win all of them, but that's a direct threat, I think, to this bottom half of the playoff picture. Is Miami's really surging right now in the AFC. And the AFC is not what we kind of thought it was going to be. There's teams that have fallen, right? Like the Browns have fallen. I mentioned Texans are not playing the way we thought they'd play. The Jags have had an absolute dumpster fire. We thought they'd maybe be decent. Cincinnati has been like Joe Burrow's playing at an MVP level and they can't win any games. So I would say Miami, who's right behind Denver right now, that's the biggest threat to keeping them out of the postseason.
Okay, yeah. And then, so do you still see Cincinnati in the picture at all, or do you think they're going to kind of fade down the stretch here?
I think they're going to be annoying to everybody.
I mean, including the Broncos. They have them later this season.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to blame it. I think that's why Sean was okay moving that Chargers game, honestly, to get some extra time against Cincinnati the next week, right? Because you're going to play the game moves to a Thursday night game. You get a little mini bye. I think Sean probably sees that with his team. Like, we might need that little extra rest, and we're playing Cincinnati the next week. I think Cincinnati could still go on a run just because Burrow's that good. I mean, they went into this bye week, and this is like insane, right? They had a bye going into week 13 or week 12. What week are we? What did we just play? 13?
I think we're going into 14, maybe?
Yeah, we just played 13.
Maybe 13.
So going into this week, they had the NFL's leading passer, receiver, an NFL leader in sacks, and they had 4 wins. Like, that's almost like that's hard to do. That was Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. So we know they're good, but I just don't know if there's enough time for them to correct some of their mistakes. But man, I wish Joe Burrow was in the postseason just because as a football fan, it's fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love watching Joe Burrow. Those games against the Ravens this season have been absolutely electric. How important do you see the Broncos and Chargers game? You mentioned that they did flex that to that Thursday. We're kind of looking at the teams behind them, but in terms of that could be a pseudo play-in for the playoff game late in the season there. Do you think that'll factor in, or do you kind of see the Chargers as solidified playoff team at this point?
I think they're a playoff team. I mean, anything can happen down these last several games, right? And somebody we started this conversation, like all of a sudden the Chargers drop 1 or 2 to teams that they should beat, right?
They have a tough schedule coming up here. I think they have Falcons, Chiefs, and maybe like Tampa the next 3, and those are all winnable.
Tampa's no pushover by any stretch at all. They should be able to put some points on Atlanta, but like, they have a really good defense. Jesse Minter's doing an outstanding job. He's going to be very quickly one of the people in consideration getting at least interviews for a head coaching job already. As good of a DC as he is, and the way Herbert is playing more, he's healthier. You can see the chemistry with Lad McConkey, like the way that's growing. J.K. Dobbins' injury may that might be the thing that, like, wow, all of a sudden they start dropping a little bit, the balance in their offense. We know they're a run first type of offense. And if Dobbins can't go, and he's had an outstanding year, and it's been a great story, great Buckeye. And so a lot can happen. That's my point over these. And that game might end up being massive on Thursday night.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking forward to the Broncos have a lot of AFC opponents here coming up, and all of them should be pretty important to their playoff picture. Speaking of, we get Bo on primetime on Monday Night Football. Do you see this as a kind of a breakout game for Bo to the national audience on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for everybody to kind of see what they've been hearing, because I do think the chatter is loud enough for people outside of Denver to kind of hear how Bo's playing and hear that I mean, we have an East Coast bias, right? I grew up in Philly. I understand that the country revolves somehow around the Northeast. It's just the way it is. And I think that helped Jaden Daniels early, playing in Washington, playing there, and then starving for a quarterback. And the way he came out of the gates, just fantastic. I think Bo's caught him in a lot of people's eyes and what they're hearing. I think they want to see it now and get an opportunity against a good defense, against a defense that can get after you and has some good corners. And so they have talent on all three levels. I think this is an opportunity against Cleveland to go out there and kind of show everybody this is why I'm in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, could be big for the Rookie of the Year award. Seeing as will be a national audience, I'm sure a lot of the people that decide that kind of stuff will be tuning into that. Well, we've had you long enough, James. Very much looking forward to the rest of the Broncos season. We'll be with you again next week and for the rest of the season. So looking forward to talking to you again. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back at noon tomorrow. Jake Shapiro joins us. We'll be talking a bunch of Nuggets and Buffs and all things Denver sports. But everyone else, have a great rest of your day.
Take it easy, everybody.